Hey, it's Melissa. Welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry, and thank you for joining us in our meat bird production barn, where it is broilers day 42, and we're raising a flock of Cornish rock cross meat chickens to produce homegrown top quality poultry. We have really enjoyed being able to take a video of this flock day by day, every day of its production, and share that on our YouTube channel. We hope that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please do interact with it. Give it the thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. We do appreciate your feedback either way, and we love to read comments from y'all. We genuinely try to reply to all of those as much as possible, and any questions, we answer what we can and research what we need to, even if it takes us a little time to get back to you. But we just really appreciate y'all supporting our channel, and we want you to be encouraged from our channel to either raise and produce some of your own food if you have an interest in that, but also source your food as locally as you possibly can and connect to farmers and producers in your area. And so that's why we created and promote an initiative that we fondly call Heart Local Ag. And so that's just to spread an awareness that let's all support local agriculture wherever local is for us as much as possible. Let's connect as folks to farmers to be able to source nutritious and wholesome food locally. And so us actually raising poultry is one way that we actually live that out in our own daily life, in our household, in our community. We do this as a small commercial operation for a little margin of profitability, but what's really exciting about the management practices that we share is that they work on flocks the size we want to raise, but they're also practices that can be scaled to smaller numbers. If somebody is interested in trying to raise poultry at their own home place and wants to raise a smaller flock, at least as a starting point, you could take practices that we have shared in this video and use them to be able to raise and produce your own flock of meat chickens and produce your own poultry. And then there's other successful ways to raise chickens for poultry as well. But this is a great starting point for anybody that's really interested in trying that out. So we're going to take a look at this flock. And as I said, they're 42 days old, so going to just give you the highlights on where we're at in their production, where we're at on some of the data that we keep track of, like how much they've eaten and how much bedding material we've put down, and also try to talk a little bit about ambient temperature. Haven't talked much about that lately, so we hope y'all are doing well. Thank you for joining us. God bless you, and stick with me. Going to take a look at the birds here. So this flock, total flock population is 296 Cornish rock cross meat chickens. They were hatched on August 23rd, 2023. And so on October 3rd, 2023, the day that we're recording this, they are 42 days old. In a perfect world, in a world that was driven entirely by our preferences, actually this flock would already have moved out of the meat bird production barn. So there's a flaw in the slaw with our production schedule to some extent. But actually, I mean, it's gonna work out okay. So it's not that bad as far as the flaw in the slaw. We're not gonna have to throw the whole bunch out, Not gonna throw out the baby with the bathwater or anything like that. We're going to make it work. But our preference for a 42-day production cycle means that from the day the chicks are hatched, which we would call day 1, to the day that we have them processed, and we opt to do that by taking them to a USDA inspected processor, we want that to happen on day 42. So that would be today. So if we had been able to have that schedule in place for this flock, we would have been out here in the meat bird production barn at about 3:30 in the morning, and we would have been carefully, one bird at a time, by hand, loading these birds into transport crates like these, about 8 birds this size full-grown meat chickens. About 8 birds will fit. Oops, sorry about that, y'all. Needed a moment to let the light adjust. About 8 of these birds this size will fit in one of those crates. So we would have been loading these birds up at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and getting on the road before daylight while they kind of stay subdued and calm because it's dark, and before the daytime starts heating up any, when we still have kind of the cool temperatures of, overnight. We would have been on the road with them, and it's almost a 2-hour drive for us to get from home to the processor. So we'd have had them going up there. So, as I've been saying that in a few videos, I've been thinking, I wonder if anybody out there is questioning how we didn't realize to start with that we had a 45-day production schedule when we keep saying we raise the birds for 42 days. We want to process them at 6 weeks old. Well, I've wondered that about myself, and that's why I say, has anybody else questioned that about us and our schedule and our thinking ahead? Because we emphasize and talk all the time about let's plan ahead, let's make sure things are in place, let's get everything we need, and here we didn't even know. We were blissfully ignorant and unaware that we had a 45-day production schedule instead of a 42-day production schedule. So that's what I'm calling the flaw in the slaw. 3 extra days of production schedule. Well, how that happened is we actually scheduled all of our processing dates for all of 2023 during the very first week of January. So in the very first week of the year, we scheduled everything. So we have the processing date for this flock, October 6th, and then we also have one more processing date for this fall out on November 30th, and that's just going to be a flock of 100 birds. But we set all of those dates back in January. So then what ends up happening is we take those dates, we count back. We want to raise them for 6 weeks, so we count back 6 weeks from the processing date, and we ask the hatchery that we get the chicks from to make their hatching date for each flock when we need it. So I'm sure that all that happened was that we asked for a certain hatching date, and the hatchery maybe wasn't planning on hatching chicks on that date, and they needed to shift it, maybe 2 or 3 days ahead, and we accepted it. And then when it came time to do this flock, we just had in our head 42 days. And so that's what we went with. So as we were raising them, we kept getting this sense that things were not lining up like we expected, especially on feed. We got to a certain point like 3 weeks in, and we kept feeling like we don't have the right amount of feed. They're ahead on feed. We're not figuring feed correctly. So we kept feeling like they were about 200, 250 pounds overfed. And so the reasoning behind all that I've talked about in other videos, but Cornish rock cross meat chickens, if they're eating a feed that is really palatable to them, that they really, really love, they'll overeat. Rather than eating what they need, they just want to keep eating. So what we figured out when we realized, the production schedule is 45 days, by that time the birds had been consistently satisfied with about 100 pounds of feed a day, and it turned out that they had got to where they were wanting like 150 pounds of feed a day, but we were keeping them on 100 pounds of feed a day because that was fitting the production schedule better, and it still ended up that caused us to feed out the amount of pounds that we expected them to eat. Actually, we had fed out by about day 40. So we have about 4 more days where we've got to put feed into them. So I think you can see here, we have changed over to cracked corn. So they were eating a complete feed it's more like, what they were eating is more like the feed ingredients, are all pulverized, and then they're formed into an extruded pellet, and then that extruded pellet is crumbled down. So what they were eating was called a complete feed crumble, and it was very palatable to them, tasted very good, and obviously is very easily digestible. So, they didn't stay full feeling long time, and they were ready to eat again. So we've switched them over to cracked corn, which we typically do at the end of a flock's production, but we were forced to this time because we had fed out the allotment of that complete feed that we had really planned on. And and actually a little more than we planned on by adding the corn to it. So anyway, so they're on the cracked corn, and if you can believe it, we're on Tuesday evening. Right here is the food they get for the rest of the week. So, and you know what? I know that's hard to believe because there's only like 125 pounds there, and we have all of Wednesday and all of Thursday to go, but we actually will take feed away from them by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, so we can feed about 100 pounds Wednesday morning and about 50 pounds Thursday morning, and that's going to be just right. So it's actually going to work out okay, but we are going to end up feeding about 3,300 pounds, and that's about 300 pounds over what we anticipated, and that lines up exactly right. If we'd been at 42 days, we could have fed them the 3,000 pounds, but then they have 3 more days, and we're feeding 300 more pounds. So, and we had them on about 100 pounds a day. So that's all lining up about right. Bedding material wise, we have used 38 bags of bedding material, and we can just visual reference on that kind of quick. Those are the bedding bags that we're using, and like I said, we've used 38 of them. That's very consistent as well. In our last flock of 300, we used 40 bags of bedding. So we will use those other 2 bags of bedding. We put some down yesterday. We just skimmed it on top of the previous bedding material, and particularly around the waters. So so far that's holding up okay. We'll use those other 2 bags on day 43 and day 44, and we'll have used 40 bags. Okay, ambient temperature wise, and we'll wrap her up. It's 85 degrees. These birds, 70 degrees is probably the ambient temperature that they prefer. Really 68 degrees, so 85 is almost 20 degrees warmer than they want to be. They're doing okay. We've got all 4 sides of the barn open, allowing a lot of cross movement of air. Whoop, that's right at the, sorry, there we go. Sorry. We also have 1 fan, you can't see it, there it is. We have 1 fan running, moving a little air one direction, and then letting the cross movement of air through the doorways pick up the rest of the ventilation and heat dissipation. They are warm though. You're seeing the panting, seeing the behaviors showing that they're coping with using not only their internal means to regulate their body temperature, but some external means. They are drinking a lot of water, so we know that everybody's okay. They're actually up eating, so we know that they're okay. They're dust bathing, things like that. So that's why you see so much of the bedding up over top of their backs. They've been doing a lot of dust bathing. That also helps them stay cool. And we're going to shut that door. It's letting a lot of sunlight in there. So that's driving some heat up. But it is warm for them, but they're going to make it. They're going to make it through just fine. And this building was built specifically for meat birds, and it was designed specifically to deal with helping them cope in warm temperatures. So we're doing okay on that. So, ambient temperature for them is ranging from high 50s at night to, it's been in the 80s the last couple days. And we're beginning of October, so you can't ever second guess the temperature ranges that you're going to have, and we try to predict that for when we time the flocks, but just like now, you know, it's 80 degrees in October. Our first frost is typically around October 10th. But it's October 3rd, and it's 85 degrees. So, you know, we've had heat stress in November, and we've had cold stress in late May. So you never can second guess with the temperature. So that's why you kind of, when you raise broilers, meat chickens, especially Cornish rock cross meat chickens, you kind of have to be prepared to do some temperature regulation, especially the first 3 weeks, if you want to keep them thriving, because especially the first 3 weeks of their life, they really need external supplemental help with regulating their own temperature. And remember, when they hatch in the first week, they want to be about 95 degrees, and then they want to be about 5 degrees cooler each week to down to about 70 degrees, and then that's pretty much where they want to stay after that point, from 70 degrees to 65 degrees, and not any hotter and not any cooler really. But It's working overnight when it gets in the 50s, because then their body heat and heat coming up off the bedding material on the floor actually helps keep them warmed up to a comfortable temperature as well. Looking ahead, we are going to try maybe a little bit different feeders. We might try to take some like PVC pipe and half it and make some kind of feeding station that we could set like along the wall. We're wondering like if we could get them to line up along the edges and the perimeter of their pen, if that can make feeding a little easier, because when they are super hungry, you know, like see there's a bunch around that water. When they are super hungry and you dump in feed, they get really frenzied around the feeders. They're not as frenzied now though, because guess what? They don't like the corn as well as they like their complete feed. So we're gonna see them slow down on eating the corn, and be mindful that manure quality changes when you change their feed. So we've seen that change in them because the corn, you know, isn't as digestible as something that's already made into a little crumble and is practically dust to start with. It's just pressed together. You know, corn is actually still got some of the element of the grain in it that the bird's body is working to digest. So so you see that in the manure, and it's not a bad thing. You see the difference because the feed is different. So all in all, they are doing well. I'm going to part with showing you, this was one of the leg problem birds. Sorry, we'll get this slide adjusted here, but see, like when she, oh no, but she stepped on her feet. When she was moved over here to this separation area, she couldn't walk at all. So she's doing a lot better. She's doing a lot better, but thanks for bearing with me. It's a long video, not a great video, but catching you up to date. Y'all take care and God bless you, and join us again on day 43.